What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more fantasy football content. Today, I am talking players I am targeting in every single draft. Now, I might not necessarily be taking them in every draft, but these are guys with their current value, their current average draft position that I feel comfortable pulling the trigger on in that situation every single time. Now, I won't talk about all the names farther down the list. Sleeper videos and stuff like that will be coming out later in the season, but a lot of these guys are like top 90 players, so we're going to talk about them. Alrighty, let's hop right into it. First player on my list comes in here at number 20. Avoid some of the top guys because they're a little too obvious if you're first round pick. Everybody likes you. So number 20, my first player, Kyren Williams. I think Kyren's being drafted too late because of the draft addition of Blake Corum by the Rams in round 3. Kyren was phenomenal for fantasy football this last season, finishing as an RB2 in points per game. I do think he is going to continue to get a pretty similar role to what he had last year. Now, is he going to lose some passing down work or some first and second down work to Blake Corum throughout the season? Absolutely. But when you look at the utilization rate that he had last year, it was absolutely incredible. Christian McCaffrey-esque. And I think when you look at his efficiency numbers and that utilization, I doubt the Rams are going to phase him out, especially right off the bat. And even if you like Blake Corum, I would let Kyren be the guy for another year. Keep Blake Corum a little fresher. He's a little bit of an older guy, has less wear and tear in his body, so he could be the guy the year after that. I don't know if that's their plan. I think they wanted just two quality running backs. But Kyren is going to be the lead back. I really believe it. And I'm very comfortable taking him at the RB7 back end of round 2. Very comfortable with that draft position. Let's move on to our next player on this list, Jalen Waddle. So this last year was definitely disappointing. I think he was banged up a lot, coming a lot off the field very frequently with little aches and injuries, ankle injury that definitely limited his efficiency on the field. But I think he's going to be back in a major way this year. I think he's a phenomenal player. The Dolphins paid him a lot of money to continue to be a featured part of this offense. At wide receiver 16, I'm very comfortable with that draft price for Jalen Waddle, and I'm willing to pay that. I get him around times end of round 3, beginning of round 4. Anytime Jalen Waddle's in round 4, he's basically an auto pick for me, so that's a great pick in my opinion there. Moving on, another guy, he's an honorable mention. I'll just throw him out there. DK Metcalf, one of the most targeted red zone wide receivers year in, year out. Doesn't have the best quarterback around him, but I think he's a number one on that offense. He'll get a lot of targets and gets a lot of high-quality targets. The targets are worth more in fantasy football, those red zone targets, and those targets deep down the field. Next up, we have, where did he go? Here he is. Oh, he's so far down. Where are we ever going to find him? And it's because I passed him. Next up, we have Devonta Smith. Wide receiver 23 currently, 2 years ago, finished as a top 10, or as a wide receiver 1, in fantasy football. I think he can return very close to being a top 15 wide receiver, and you're getting him at wide receiver 23. He's a guy who's going to go out there and get 120 to 130 targets, going to have 1,100 yards, 7 to 10 touchdowns, something like that. And when you can get that this far back, he's a great wide receiver. He's got a good situation on that offense with that quarterback. Obviously, he's not the one there with A.J. Brown, but he's good enough. He's paid. He's going to continue to be a featured part of that offense. And I think you're getting that discount on him because people know he's not the one, but he's finished as a wide receiver 1 before, and I think he has the capability to do it again. Moving on, another guy I think that is being drafted criminally too late, James Cook, way down here, 46, RB14 right now. Just the fact that you're telling me Zay Flowers is going ahead of James Cook in drafts, that's wild to me. James Cook this last year, 237 carries, and they bring in Ray Davis in the draft from Kentucky. He's a bigger back who I expect to have that goal line role. Obviously, Josh Allen scores a lot of touchdowns around the goal line as well. He has that to compete with, but he is a dynamic player. He can score not on the goal line. He can make a lot of things happen for himself. I think the touchdowns will be higher just based off his total volume of carries he's going to receive. And I think he's a dynamic player at the running back position who isn't getting the proper credit. When you look at the strides he's made, how good he was in the receiving game this last year, I believe averaged over 10 yards per reception. He's phenomenal in that aspect of the game. Obviously, the players leaving the Buffalo Bills, the pass catchers, Gabe Davis is gone, Stephon Diggs is gone. James Cook could have an even bigger role in the passing game this year with the inexperienced wide receivers they have. And like I said, he's an explosive player who can score from not being just on the red zone. He can score from 40 out. He can score from 20 out. There's lots of ways for him to score on the ground. And I think he's going to find more ways to do that. And if he does, I think he's going to be an RB1 this next fantasy football season. Another guy I want to bring up is Amari Cooper. Now, Cooper this last year was very good with Deshaun Watson, contrary to popular belief. Good just overall, had over 1,200 receiving yards this last year, playing with some poor quarterbacks all around. Obviously, Flacco played well at the end of the season, but all the quarterback situations he had before that, not very good, and he still produced for fantasy football, and I think he will again. Amari Cooper is a good player. He's heading into his age 30 season. He's a great route runner and somebody that I think is just a very good value. Like the fact that Zay Flowers is going ahead again, Amari Cooper, he's wide receiver 26. He could finish as the wide receiver 12 or something like that this season. That's within the realm of possibilities for him. And you're just getting such a massive value on him. I love taking Amari Cooper late, stacking some RBs early, throwing him in as my wide receiver 2. I feel fantastic about that strategy. Moving on to our next player, he's farther down this list, Kenneth Walker, another guy. He will be the starting running back by a mile in Seattle this season. Sure, they have Zach Charbonnet that scared people away last year, but last year he was the guy. He got banged up a little bit, missed some games, but outside of injuries to Kenneth Walker, he's going to be the starter. He's an explosive player who can score. He'll be the goal line running back. He's got a lot of things that benefit him. He caught some passes last year, not a ton, but he did. And when you're talking about RB16 price, I just think he can easily return on that with the physical skill set he has and the position he's at on that offense. I think if Geno's a little bit better, it makes everything so much better for these players in Seattle. And I think he'll be better than he was this last season. Not a massive bet by me on Geno, but again, when you compare how good he was 2 years ago to how crappy he was this last year, I think he'll improve. I think that will benefit Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, and that entire Seattle Seahawks offense. Moving on, we only have a few guys left. So at the quarterback position, these are some guys that where they're being drafted. I really, really like the value. We got to scroll down here a little bit. So it's Jordan Love I'm going to touch on first, another guy, Kyler Murray. So basically, I have been able to get all these guys at end of round 7, beginning of round 8. And I love that draft value you're able to get on him. Jordan Love last year was a quarterback 5. Now I think he's going to be even better. That first half of the season had some hiccups. Really wanted to tear on that second half. Just was on another level. And if that's the level that Jordan Love plays on, again, you don't project him to be quite that good. But if he's anywhere close to that, he's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback again. You're getting a massive draft day value on him. They have a good offensive line around him. When Christian Watson, Jaden Reed are both healthy, they've got some really good skill position players around him. They bring in Josh Jacobs, led the league in rushing 2 years ago, and has shown some chops in the passing game in the past. I just think Jordan Love's in a really good situation and going at a great value currently in drafts. Now, next, Kyler Murray, another guy we've seen finish as a top 10, or it's a top 5 fantasy football quarterback in the past. The rushing upside, Jordan Love has rushing upside as well, but Kyler is a little bit different. He could easily rush for 500-something yards. Was coming off that torn ACL this last year, still was produced for fantasy football. And when you consider that they have Marvin Harrison now in town, an absolute great player they took with the number 4 overall selection. Trey McBride broke out this last year. James Conner as well. They've got some pieces of this offense I think he's going to be able to be successful for in fantasy football. And if you can get him as a QB 10, I don't see him finishing lower than that. I love taking quarterbacks with rushing upside who I think will definitely outkick their draft position. One other guy I'll bring up real quick. I wasn't even going to talk about him originally, but just seeing him at RB22. David Montgomery. I have him ranked in my top 15 running backs. He's a guy I see as similar to that Mark Ingram role that we saw the Saints utilize when they had Kamara. I think that's going to be a similar positioning with Gibbs and Montgomery. They paid him. They've got a great offensive line. He was way too effective around the goal line running games out and just being a first and second down banger last year for them to not utilize him. Not saying it'll be the same utilization as last year, but he had 13 rushing touchdowns this last year. If he has 10 this year, he's still going to be a force for fantasy football. Okay, moving on. Christian Watson, another guy. I love getting Christian Watson in round 8, Jordan Love in round 7, and having that cheap stack that has a ton of upside to potentially win your whole league. Now, Christian Watson, explosive player. Whenever he's on the field, he's basically been very good, but it's the injuries that kept him off. He got some testing on that hamstring this offseason, trying to even out the strength in both of his legs. Hopefully that will help keep him on the field. But when you're getting this kind of draft position on him already, drafting him in round 8, let's say he only suits up for 10 contests. Well, you have an absolute stud fantasy receiver on your team for 10 contests who has league-winning upside and the ability to go out there every single week. You plug him in your lineup, he could win the entire week for you. He runs like a deer. He's a big receiver who runs under a 4.4. He's 6'4". He's impossible to keep up with down the field, and once he has the ball in his hands, he can do some things, can win jump balls. He's an extremely talented wide receiver, and the value he's going at currently I think is too hard to pass up. Another guy, this is our last player on the list, who's being criminally undervalued, Raheem Mostert, RB27. Where did he finish last year? RB2. Now, Devon Achane had historic yards per carry, historic yards per touch numbers this last season. I absolutely understand the hype around him. But Raheem Mostert's being left for dead when he signed a contract extension this offseason, was the goal line running back for a fantastic offense and just produced in every single way you could really hope for fantasy football. Even if, let's say, Achane is the guy this year, I don't think Achane, as small as he is, 190-something pounds, is going to be the goal line back. I think that will still be Raheem Mostert. I think he can continue to be excellent in that role. And again, why would you take it away from him when he's done so well in it? Raheem Mostert's criminally underdrafted, a guy you can get in 6th, 7th rounds of drafts and just plug him in as your RB2 or your third RB and feel really good at it. That's why I think if Raheem Mostert's my third running back or my RB2 on a team where I take a ton of elite pass catchers early, I feel so good about those teams because I really do believe in Mostert. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be the RB2, but you could be the RB15 and you could still have a massive return on your draft position for a guy that's going to score touchdowns on an offense. We've seen him in that role. He still has good speed. He's an older back, but he doesn't have the same wear and tear of a lot of these older backs have because he hasn't been utilized as a go-to guy his entire career. But whenever he has, he's shown for fantasy football. I think he'll continue to do so in 2024/5. Alrighty, if you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. You're going to stick around for all of these. I'm going to bring out my value series, sleepers, busts, early round draft targets, all that good content, mock drafts every Monday. You guys are going to want to stick around for all these videos if you want to win your fantasy football leagues. If that's something that's important to you, winning your fantasy football championship, hit that subscribe button. If you have any comments or likes, please let me know. It really helps out the algorithm, and I'll respond to all comments. This has been Fantasy Joe. Thank you guys so much for watching.